We have to find a way to talk and have dialogue and be tolerant between other views.
You have to have open dialogue, and that's where free speech is so important.
Consent's a very important thing, and today in the Me Too movement, it's been very important because I think it's really opened up a lot of eyes.
Cannabis is a healing herb. We as the people, we need to stand up and make a move.
If you committed sexual assault, it doesn't matter when it was, you should be held accountable for that. However, we have to make sure that we actually make sure they committed sexual assault, and we have to make sure that all allegations are verified.
They'll put in these programs thinking that it'll help everyone, but what they forget is that the pathway to hell is paved with good intention.
And I think that's what this whole movement is all about anyways, is trying to be open to ideas.
Welcome to Liberty Talks Podcast with John Douglas, and today interviewing a very special guest, the founder of Lone Conservative, contributor to Daily Wire, and the winner of the Reagan Award at CPAC, Kassy Dillon. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So today what we're going to be talking about is the leftism and the socialism that's rising on the Democratic Party, Generation Z, and how they're falling into it, and how as conservatives we can combat that. So Kassy, if you remember, I sent you a Pew Research study from January, so it was a while back, but it basically showed that the Gen Z generation, it has some pretty left-wing views. They think that race is becoming a very important thing, that people of color, such as Black people or Hispanics, are generally kind of discriminated against in the U.S., and that we need to do something to help them do some more affirmative action. I was wondering, why do you think that is? Why do you think Gen Z is coming out like that?
Well, that study actually surprised me because the past studies have really said that Gen Z is going to be more conservative. But what I think it might be is what conservatism is kind of changing. So a lot of these left-wing outlets Pew Research isn't left-wing. They're the most centrist you're going to get. But when they're interviewing people, they're looking at things that might have been more important to conservatives, say, in the 90s than it is now. Conservatives now don't really care about, for instance, pushing religious values in other people. So honestly, like in the 80s or 90s, I probably would have been a liberal. You know, they're censoring things on TV and censoring things you can say, what you can wear, and things like that. So I think I would have been a little bit more liberal back then. So I do think that it depends what you're asking them what conservatism is. I think if you went and you asked what libertarianism is, I think you would have had a lot more of the young people saying they're libertarian. But you have to remember, I have hope for Gen Z because Gen Z is probably the biggest consumer of YouTube. And YouTube is a very right-wing place. So I do have hope for them. My little brother, this is a funny story. My little brother doesn't really care where I'm working or anything. He had no idea. And I tell him, like, I'm moving to LA to work for an outlet. I didn't think he knew what the Daily Wire was or who Ben was. And one day he was watching Ben's show. Mind you, I'm already working at the Daily Wire in LA. And Ben says my name on the show. And my brother texts me, he goes, "Hey, why did Ben Shapiro just say your name?" And I'm like, hey, how do you know who Ben Shapiro is? So I do think that the young people are consuming these outlets, and hopefully that it doesn't turn into a socialist generation.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's something that has been exciting. A lot of people have been consuming that type of media. I have a similar story with my brother. One day I got home from college and I walked into his room and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm watching Steven Crowder." I said, "Really? You know who that is?" He's like, "Yeah, I watch him all the time." I was like, "Oh, that's really neat." And even my dad now, he came up to me a while back, and even one of his friends in my school, he asked me, they're like, "Do you know who this Ben Shapiro guy is?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know who he is. Like, he's awesome."
Well, I actually wrote about this story I wrote an article like a month ago, and Fox News ended up having me on talking about it, and it was I dated a Democrat. And when I dated a Democrat, Tom. And when I met Tom, I met his family eventually, and his family didn't seem political at all, but his dad is now a huge fan of the Daily Wire. And I thought that was really funny because he grew up as a Democrat and so did his family. So maybe they're converting the older generations too.
Yeah, hopefully. That's definitely something exciting. But that going back to that study, I thought it was surprising too to see that because I'd always been told that the Gen Z was going to be the most conservative generation. Now, I always met that with a degree of skepticism because, for one, the studies weren't that big. I think the original study actually came from the UK, from a class, and people were asking them conservative questions. They were answering it. But it was just kind of a class, wasn't that many people. I didn't think it was that representative. So I always warn people of taking that for granted, and that's something I am scared that did happen because people did take it for granted a little bit. that Gen Z is more conservative than any other generation. Because what it looks like is that they're not. And if you go to a college campus, most Gen Zs are in college campuses now, and you can tell that they're pretty on the left, pretty far left sometimes. But one thing that's interesting is if you actually look at the CNN exit polls from 2016, a lot of states, if you break it down by age, a lot of them went red for, I think, 18 to 21-year-olds, which I thought was really interesting. Did you ever see anything about that? Or you see anything like that?
No, I didn't. But one thing I do want to add into there is I think a lot of it might be that Generation Z, which honestly, I'm not sure if I'm part of Generation Z. I read Pew Research cuts it off at 96. Some don't. I was born in 96. I don't know if I'm a millennial or Generation Z at this point. But I think a lot of it is they're more politically active than any other generation. And I say this because if you would have went to a college campus in the 90s or the early 2000s and you're talking to people about politics or talking to people about what they care about, people are going to say partying, hanging out with friends,
Yeah.
being part of my fraternity or my sorority. That's not really the case anymore. Like, yes, most college students don't care about politics, but I think there is an increase in political activism in college. And I think a lot of them just go with whatever everyone else is going with, and that's why they go with the left.
Yeah, I certainly agree, and that's something I see a lot at U of H, the college I go to. Pretty much every day, if it's a day ending in Y, there's going to be some political event going on campus. I think we have Apartheid Week coming up, and so we're going to have.
Oh, that's my favorite one.
We're going to have SJP, and we're bringing some IDF soldiers out there to come help us. So that'll be really interesting. But I agree. That's something I've noticed too, that the Generation Z is really active in politics. And by the way, I will, as a Generation Z myself, 'cause I was born in 1998, I will allow you to be a part of Generation Z because the
I don't know if I want to be part of Generation Z. Y'all are the ones who are eating like Tide Pods and stuff.
Well, here's what I usually tell people about that. The millennials never found a way to weed out their weird people and their bad people like Gen Z has. They eat Tide Pods. That's how we know that they're the others now. So we found a way. Y'all didn't.
Yeah. By the way, am I allowed to say y'all? You're from Texas. Am I allowed to appropriate your culture as somebody from Massachusetts?
Of course. I 100% believe that one day Texas will rule the world. So
No. Texas needs a Texit, break off. Everyone will go there. It will be a great place.
it would be a great place. But imagine if Texas just was everything.
I mean, that'd be great too.
It would be the end of world history. Everything would be perfect. But anyways, so yeah, Generation Z. I pretty much agree with your assessment that is the most political generation, and that it does look like it's kind of on the left, but it's certainly not on the left as the millennial generation. Now, the other question I want to get to is we see these new rising fresh faces in the Democratic Party, as Ben Shapiro says, so fresh, so face. We see Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and of course the famous AOC. Do you think that these people are going to have an effect on Generation Z? Because what I see is that AOC, even though she is not a smart person and she consistently says dumb things, she is very good at Twitter. And even when I see her tweets, I'm like, oh, it's a light. Wait, no, that's stupid. So she's really good at Twitter. Do you think her presence on social media will affect Gen Zers in moving to a socialist direction because she speaks ignorance with such conviction and confidence?
Yeah, I think one thing we can say about AOC that we can't say about a lot of other Democrats is that she actually believes what she's saying. She is a very authentic, genuine person in my mind. Like, I really think she believes what she says. I think Bernie Sanders does too, but I think there's some others out there who just say what's politically convenient, like a Klobuchar or Corey, Spartacus. There you go. Mm-hmm. They actually don't really believe what they say. They're looking at poll numbers and going off of that. So I do commend AOC for that, but she's actually has very dangerous views because she's trying to normalize socialism by pretend. So what they do, this is what they do when they talk about socialism. They say socialism is great. It's never been tried before. And then they redefine socialism and they're like, oh, it's a great thing. We're going to redefine it as something else. So they're
right. They just keep lowering the bar. They
try to make it as murky as they can. So somebody who is skeptical doesn't really understand it. It's someone who's kind of like, I don't know if that's an okay thing. They make it as complicated as they can. So somebody's like, oh, okay, sounds fine. So I do think that they're very dangerous. I think those three, we keep lumping them in together, but they all have their different dangerous aspects. I do think AOC is really good at Twitter, which kind of frightens me because I thought Twitter was going to die once the Trump presidency was over. I felt like Trump was keeping Twitter alive, but now it looks like AOC is now the new ruler of Twitter.
The ruler of Democrats.
Man, that's my favorite part about all of this is that AOC, a freshman congresswoman, former bartender from New York, is now in control of the Democratic Party, and that's wild. That's completely crazy. Nancy Pelosi has no control anymore.
But I've been told that the U.S. is a very bad place for minority women and that we oppress them and there's no way for them to rise up. And that's what I was told by AOC.
Yeah, that's what she's saying. But I think this is what I really want. I want AOC to be like Justice Ginsburg, and I want Dan Crenshaw to be like Scalia, and I want them to become friends. Like, think about how awesome this would be if them two became friends and she stopped demonizing Republicans. She can go put out socialist views like Bernie does. Bernie will go on a stage and debate Ted Cruz. She will not, what is it called? Catcalling if you ask her to debate.
Mm-hmm.
I just want her to have some Republican friends so she stops acting like they're the enemy. That's not the case. We should be trying to get along. You can spew your socials, and that's fine. Somebody can shut it down. But that doesn't mean they're actually attacking you as a person. She makes it very personal.
Right, and I think there's a broader point to here that I think most Republicans know someone on the left, know a Democrat, but there's a lot of Democrats, people on the left who don't know a conservative. And I think AOC is one of those people. I mean, where she grew up in the Bronx, majority minority district, I have never been to New York, so I don't want to presume that much.
You don't want to.
Yeah, I've been told. But the way she demonizes conservatives in such a way, it shows that she doesn't just have an understanding of any sort of understanding of conservative values, but that she really thinks that conservatives are just really awful people who just want to destroy her and the Democrats and people of color. And that's why I think she won't debate any conservatives, because she doesn't think there's a debate to be had because they're so evil. Why would you debate that? And that's what scares me about Gen Z. If they go along with that, then the country is going to get a much worse place.
I just can't wait until we have a Nikki Haley presidency and everything she said about Democrats hate, or Republicans hate women and hate people of color. I just can't wait till the first person who's president as a woman and a person of color is going to be Nikki Haley and as a Republican. So I just can't wait for that. That's going to shove it in all of the Democrats' face who use identity politics and pretend that Republicans hate minorities, because it's just not true.
Then to take it a step even further, I think we should tell Dan Crenshaw to run as VP under Nikki Haley. Have a Haley Crenshaw presidency.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I could definitely see that happening. Yeah, I would be all for that ticket. That'd be a great ticket.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. And then maybe, since they're actually good at spouting conservative values and they're likable, maybe and Dan Crenshaw has a good Twitter presence, perhaps they could help change Gen Z in that way. But going back to the socialism stuff, one thing you said about how socialists keep moving the bar for what is socialism, and they keep murking it up and watering it down. Well, one thing we actually see, what I think is pretty amazing, is, now they say Denmark, Norway, Sweden, these are socialist countries, even though they're capitalist countries with the socialist distribution
with a lower corporate tax rate than us.
Amazingly. But here's how we know they don't actually mean that, is we ask them, do you condemn Maduro? Should Nicolas Maduro go? Should Juan Guaido become president of Venezuela? They all say no. They all want to keep Maduro in. What that tells me, and I wish that Gen Zs would see, is that they actually do believe that Venezuela is a socialism that they want, whereas Norway and Denmark are countries that aren't actually socialist, but they're going to use that as a prop so they can actually implement Venezuela. Do you believe that, or is that what you see going on?
No, I think their problem with Venezuela is they don't want it to be they don't want us telling them what to do. So their whole colonialism thing, that's what the issue is here. But it's not us telling them what to do. It's a Venezuelan who has legitimacy who is pulling this claim.
Right.
And so I think they're just going against the president. I think if Obama was doing it, they'd be fine with it. This is just politics right here, and it's quite frankly ridiculous for them to even go off this path, because what's going on in Venezuela is horrible, and not enough people are talking about it. And I'm criticizing the right-wing media too. Instead of going off of every stupid thing AOC says, we should be talking about what's going on in Venezuela, because it's really crazy and it's really sad.
Yeah, certainly. I actually have family from Venezuela, and it's really sad. Most of them live in the U.S. now, and they won't admit it, but there's no way they're going back to Venezuela because of Maduro. And I think I've seen Marco Rubio, who's been down there for a while. I think Barbara's trying to get into the frame.
Barbara! She's recovering from her. Oh, what's wrong, baby? She's just recovering. She's fine. Don't worry about her.
By the way, off topic real quick. Barbara's a great dog, but I have to say, I think Yoko from Neon Taster. That's my spirit.
I thought you were about to go off about Kyle Kashuv. Me and Kyle Kashuv have this huge freaking rivalry going with our dogs.
Yeah, I've
Mine's
seen that
is
one
cuter,
too.
mine's I'm sorry, no dog is cuter than Barbara. She has bright green eyes. We actually have the same eye color, which people are like, why do you look like your dog? And she's just really soft and she's sweet and she's a beagle and she doesn't bark. She just relaxes and she's a good girl. But right now she's a little in pain because of her surgery.
I'm a blue heeler guy myself. Never really been a fan of small dogs, but you know what, Barbara, conservative animal. I'll make room for her. She's
not named after Barbara Bush. Everyone thinks that. I really just wanted to give her like an old lady name, so when I yell at her, people laugh. And I thought Barbara was kind of cute. And so like I'm at the dog park, and I'm like, Barbara, come here. And everyone's like looking around, like thinking I'm yelling at my grandma or something.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of part of the crowd that was like, Barbara, what is that for a dog? Okay.
It works. I call her Barbs or Barbie or Barb.
There you go. I mean, if it works, it works. I can't argue with it. But anyways, so what I also want to talk about is, one thing, and this is more recent, I just talked about this yesterday, was now we have the Democratic Party. It looks like they're completely embracing anti-Semitism because of Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. Now, yeah, like I said earlier, we have Apartheid Week coming up soon. Do you think that this embracement of anti-Semitism is going to make it even harder for Jewish people not to live in America? And not just that, do you think it's also going to turn Gen Zers and maybe even some younger millennials and maybe more anti-Semitic and against Jews? They're going to think that's all right because they don't rank high enough on the intersectional scale?
Well, I think there's a few different factors going on here. First, Protestants have always been very pro-Israel, and not because of the reasons that the Young Turks guy is saying. Said something that Christians are pro-Israel because they want all the Jews to gather so the end times come. That's ridiculous. That is absurd. Christians like Israel because they keep their holy sites protected and because Israel has similar values to America.
I mean, I don't put much value on what a guy who named his company after the people who created the Armenian genocide say. So
exactly. So that's the first factor there, that Protestants are becoming less pro-Israel, and that's not because they're anti-Israel, but because they're just politically apathetic and they don't get it anymore. So that's why there's more trips bringing them to Israel, bringing them back to their roots. I've been to Israel several times. And I've been to all the Christian holy sites and all the Jewish holy sites, and Israel's just a really great place. I'm trying to go back this summer. I might be going on 2 trips this summer.
I'm actually going my first time this summer.
Oh, really? With who?
With APAC.
Oh, that's awesome. You're going on the campus, half Democrats, half college Republicans?
I think so. I still don't have all the information about it yet, but...
It's like the Milstein Foundation or something?
Well, I'm doing it with Houston Hillel.
Oh, cool. I know which one you're going on. Yeah, so I went with APAC my first time as well. You're going to have a great time. You're going to love it. It's going to be really, really fun. Make sure you don't shave your face before going to the Dead Sea. Everyone forgets that, and it hurts. So men
don't shave your face.
Women, don't shave your legs. It hurts.
All right. That'd be good to know.
So I think what's going on here is, first of all, I don't think that their comments they said make them anti-Israel or anti-Semitic. I think their beliefs make them anti-Semitic. It's not just these comments where I'm like, oh my God, you said this, you're anti-Semitic. I genuinely believe that they're anti-Israel and anti-Jewish. I think that they hold, this is what people don't get. You can criticize Israel, not be anti-Semitic. That's fine. But when you hold Israel to a different standard that you do every single other country in the world, then you're being anti-Semitic. There's no reason why the Jewish state should be held to different values than every single other state. Why do I not? Well, Tlaib, I will give Omar credit because she does go after Saudi Arabia, but why aren't you going after Iran? Why aren't you going after Venezuela? Why aren't you going after these other countries? Why are you holding Israel to a different standard when Israel holds itself to a higher standard and treats people better in time of war? Like, Israel goes out of its way to stop casualties.
Yeah, it's the only
way that the U.S. won't even do.
It's also the only country in the world that consistently lets rockets be fired into it.
Exactly.
And doesn't just wipe out the country doing it, which I think is a pretty amazing thing. But what scares me is that it's happened to the Labour Party already in Great Britain. They've normalized anti-Semitism, and now I see it happening in the Democratic Party because they're so beholden to their radical base. And do you think that might affect Gen Z and them becoming more anti-Semitic because they're going to see, hey, they don't rank that high on the intersectional scale. They're just like white Christian men. We can dump on them all we want.
So I want to throw out there that hate crimes happen most often to Jews, and the Democrats don't like to acknowledge this. And if they do acknowledge it, they blame it on the right, which is not true. It's not the right's fault. Yes, there are obviously atrocities coming from the right, but also comes from the left. But what I think right now is I don't think the Democratic Party is going to become anti-Israel yet. I say this because they're still going to APAC conferences, they're still speaking for pro-Israel, but within the next 10 to 15 years, it's going to become a partisan issue. It's no longer going to be the Democratic Party with the Republican Party. That's the one issue they come together on. In 10 to 15 years, they're going to be anti-Israel. And they're going to be anti-Israel because Israel is having elections right now, and it looks like they're going to stay right-wing. Israel was a very socialist country until the Likud came into power, then it went very right-wing, and it hasn't really gone left-wing since. And going forward, it looks like it only has a chance to go more right-wing. There's been different parties breaking up. A lot of Americans don't understand Israeli politics. So basically, it's a parliamentary system, and there's a lot of parties there who are breaking off the Likud party and becoming more right-wing. And when they become more right-wing, this means more settlements. This means less being tolerant of the PA. This means less negotiations with the PA. So I do think that they're going to become more right-wing, and I think they should. But this is going to anger a lot of Democrats, and they are going to become anti-Israel in the next 10 to 15 years for sure.
Yeah, I can certainly see that happening. And the other question I want to ask you about that is, in the Labor Party, we've seen a lot of Labor MPs actually pretty much leave the party because of the anti-Semitism. Now, I think that is probably not going to happen in the Democratic Party because in Great Britain, it's a parliamentary system. They have several different parties they can go to, whereas in the U.S., you only have Democrat or Republican. But do you think there's any chance of Democrats breaking up, even though the U.S. is a two-party system? There's not really anywhere for them to go to.
No, I don't think Israel would be the issue why they would break up. I think that in America, we're not single party or single issue voters, so we don't have the opportunity to go to a different party. But I do think there'll be different factions and caucuses within Congress that are going to be against this. I think they just started the Democratic Majority for Israel or something like this. They have some nonprofit that just started that condemned Omar. Actually, they put out this really trolly statement, which made me laugh. It was about Rashida Tlaib. Her campaign website is made by a company called Wix, which is an Israeli company, when she's like pro BDS. So they're making a joke. They're like, oh, we're just so happy, Congresswoman, that you broke your boycott of Israel.
You actually wrote an article about that, I think, didn't you?
Yeah, I wrote about that. That was really, that one cracked me up.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
I've been to the West Bank a lot. And I went to this one halva factory. Halva is like kind of like candy made out of tahini. You guys probably don't know what I'm talking about, but it's like this Israeli Arab candy thing, and they make it in this one industrial district in the West Bank, and they employ Palestinians and Jews next to each other working together, and a lot of Russian Jews too, which came to Israel in the 90s in a migration once the Soviet Union fell.
Yes, and I was about to bring up that shirt in our next topic. It is an amazing shirt.
Yeah, but what I want to point out is BDS really hurts Palestinians because when they're working for Israeli companies, they're making significantly more than they would in the West Bank, especially when the West Bank has a very high unemployment rate, and Gaza is even crazier. I've read some things recently that SodaStream might be going into Gaza, but Gaza's unemployment rate is like 30 to 40%. It's insanely bad. And these Democrats don't realize that the average Israeli wants peace. They don't want this. They want peace. Their heart breaks for the people of Gaza. But when you have a terrorist regime running Gaza, how are you supposed to make peace? Can't.
Yeah, and especially whenever the Palestinians actually elected Gaza, and I think elected Hamas in 2006 in the Gaza Strip.
And they still haven't had elections since. And you want to go and support those people that won't even let their own people vote? That's crazy.
Yeah, I totally agree. But the next thing I want to talk about is I want to get into solutions, because at Liberty Talks, what we like to do is at the end of all our conversations, we usually in some way like to talk about solutions, because it's easy to just scream at something and say that's not how it should be. It's much harder to propose solutions, especially if you're in Congress.
If you want me to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that's never going to happen.
Oh no, I don't think that. I've been against the two-state solution for a while because I don't even think the Palestinians want a two-state solution.
Nope.
Going to solutions now. How can we convince Gen Z and maybe some younger millennials to move to the conservatives? Well, one thing I talk about is I usually say we spend way too much time on the pragmatic economic ideas, whereas we should be talking about the moral ideas, morality, why it's moral to be a conservative and moral to be a socialist. But what do you think?
Well, I think that we need to reach out to these people in ways where they would be paying attention. So like I said, a lot of them aren't really politically involved, but when you have like PewDiePie out there having Ben Shapiro on a show, or when you have all these different podcasts, I think it works. The problem right now is tech shutting down conservatives. So that's making it a lot harder. But I think when you stay engaged in college and when you have these different ways of reaching out to Gen Z, I think that's a solution. So for instance, at Lone Conservative, we started this new thing recently about a year ago, where we taken high school students and teach them how to write and let them be part of Lone Conservative. And then we pair them up with one of our college writers and they have a mentor. So that's really worked because a lot of times these people might be thinking they're conservative, or they grew up in a conservative household. They go to, for instance, where I went to school, Mount Holyoke, and they come back with their hair chopped off, screaming socialism and screw the patriarchy. That happens in college because people feel edgy in college and they want to have fun. And let me tell you, left-wing protests are really fun. Okay, I've been to them. They're really fun. Like I went to one in DC and they had boom boxes. They had a blow-up elephant. They had holograms going on a building. They had drums. You know, it was a lot of fun. That's something fun to do in college. So we just need to let them know that, it might be fun, but are you actually doing the right thing? You should probably get involved with your college Republicans. Honestly, the whole thing is just outreach. And then the other problem is conservatives are kind of boring. Sorry, we are. We want to talk about policy instead of talk about how conservatism can make your life better, or, you know, some of us just need to let loose and have some fun. And so you need to outreach to these people without coming off like that stiff, here's my book, let's just talk about policy all day long. Like, no, we need to have some fun and just be normal people. So that's what I try doing on my Twitter. I'm not just like this political animal on my Twitter, just acting like all I care about is politics. My whole life's about politics. I'll tweet about other things because you can be conservative and be a commentator and also be a normal person. And we need to let them know that, yes, you can be a normal person.
Yeah, I'm not that really good at Twitter. Usually I tweet about politics. Lately, though, I haven't tweeted that much about politics except breaking news stuff. But I have started getting more into a lot of cultural stuff. I try and have some fun.
Twitter's fun.
Yeah. And
it's getting a little less fun recently because I think people are just getting more trolly on it, honestly. And Twitter keeps banning people for saying the stupidest things. Like, for instance, like learn to code, you can get banned for saying that. But this one left-wing person tweeted at one of my contributors who's Black and called him the N-word, and it's still up. We've reported them. They said that, yes, we found an issue, never made them take down the tweet with saying the N-word. But someone who says learn to code gets banned. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, because learn to code hurts the feelings of the leftists. And Jack Dorsey, that's what he cares about. He doesn't really care about conservatives, and that's a sad thing. And I think it's really telling when he says that he believes in free speech, but at the same time, he believes that he needs to crack down on people so he can create a better, more inclusive environment. I think it shows where his values really lies. That's what's pretty scary. And but what's also scary is that you said that what's good about YouTube and Twitter and all these things is they're huge platforms for conservatives, but they keep getting banned now and shut down by YouTube
Demonetized.
And Facebook. Yeah, exactly.
It's not cheap to make YouTube videos. It's not. Like, people have quit their jobs and do it all day long. You need to edit, you need to produce, you need to, if you're a girl, you gotta do your hair and makeup, you gotta write your script, like all of these different things. It's not cheap. So people literally quit their jobs, did this for making great money, and then got demonetized. It's terrible. Yeah,
it's really sad, especially when it hurts so many good causes too. Like I wrote an article for Emily and Nathan Burning at letthemlive.com about one of their posts. It was about a young fetus that was basically born, and it died eventually, but it was born really, really young. I can't remember the entire story, but they paid, I think like $20 to have it boosted, and Twitter just completely shut it down because they didn't like the message. Yeah. And it was really sad because they paid money to have it boosted, and even after they paid money, Twitter was like, nope, not
well, it's
happening.
because if you watch Jack Dorsey's interview with Joe Rogan, both of them, the first one and the second one, which just happened last week, he doesn't just think that he's controlling Twitter. He honestly thinks he's changing the world, which, yeah, he might be. And he thinks it's upon himself to make people discuss things better. And so he's doing word policing. He might act like he cares about free speech, but no, if you really listen to what he's saying, he thinks that he's like this arbiter for like civil discussion within the world, not just in the Twitter context. And by doing this, he thinks that he has control over how people say things, and he's just trying to control the message, and it's just not right.
Yeah, it's really sad, especially when these tech giants that here, like Jack Dorsey, think they're the thought police and believe that their views aren't just correct, but the most moral views. Therefore, they have a duty to shut down views they consider immoral, which is usually just mainstream conservative views. And while that's happening, I believe it's going to get worse before it gets better. I think eventually they're going to go too far, and they're going to get deemed as a publisher, and that's going to stop them from doing all of this. But until then, I think it's going to get a lot worse. And until that point comes, how do you think conservatives can better reach the young generation whenever they're getting banned and shadow banned and censored on all these social media platforms?
Well, I think the problem is also, like, it's some of our fault too. So when conservatives are trying to say something out there, sometimes we'll pick the more edgy way to say things because we know it's going to get attention. And when you are really edgy, there's a good chance you're going to get banned.
Right.
So you just need to make sure you're communicating things in a way where if you get banned, it completely falls on Twitter. Like, for instance, when Jesse Kelly got banned, and it was ridiculous, and everyone was on his side because what he said was not crazy at all, and he should not have been banned. So you need to make sure you're not giving them even an inch to have some type of reason to actually justify it. But the problem is we do have blue checkmark privilege. So if I got banned, it'd be a big deal. But for instance, if you got banned, it's not. So I know a lot of smaller accounts who've been completely wiped off the platform. They can't even make a new account because it's tracking their IP address or whatever. And because I have the blue checkmark privilege, they look and review my things more. So like I have said, learn to code. But not, so for instance, they're banning people for saying learn to code, not in a context at somebody. Somebody would tweet something like, you can get banned for saying learn to code, and then that person would get suspended. But if I tweeted it, they would have to look at it a little bit harder because I have a blue check mark. And that's crazy. They should be looking at everybody the same.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is why people like Louis Farrakhan are still up, because one, they do have blue check mark, and since they're on the left, they also have leftist privilege.
Yeah, this is true. But for instance, for when you want to reach out to them, I think, for instance, you really need to, say you were talking to somebody about socialism, okay? You should talk about them in socialism in a really rational manner. Like, they banned Austin Peterson because he said he posted a GIF from Twitter saying off to the gulags, okay? Edgy, very edgy, but also Twitter's own GIF, and they banned him for that. So maybe he should have, I mean, he shouldn't have to do this, but if you want to make sure you're not going to get banned, maybe you should be more diplomatic in what you tweet, which sucks because you want to just tweet whatever you want. But we are in a situation where you can't. You have to watch out for yourself because getting off the platform is a bad thing. Like we don't want to give Twitter what they want, but we don't want to get off the platform because once you do, you can't outreach people anymore.
Yeah, and that's the sad thing about it. And so hopefully what we can do as conservatives, we can start finding new ways to reach out to other people. What I hope is that someone who actually does have conservative values, maybe not even conservative values, but just American values, creates a tech company and is able to outcompete all of these, which I think they would be because they want to be censoring people and now driving.
That's the problem. This has been tried and it's not effective. Like Gab started. Gab is not a place I'd want to be. And then there was something called Trump Town that started for a while. That's too focused on Trump. It's not. And
I agree. That's the problems I've seen with them too. They need to not make it tailored to conservatives. They need to make it tailored to everyone and actually treat it like how these tech giants treated their companies when they first started out. Just because these people are big doesn't mean that they can't be overcome. But
it's all the branding, because when you brand it, oh, this is a platform for free speech, and people are going to come and say stupid things just to test your free speech. I think they just need a tech company out there that's willing to hire the manpower to go and actually review things. Because I do think that there's things that should get you banned. I absolutely do. I think when you're tweeting Jews and ovens at me, which happens quite a bit when the alt-right acts like idiots, you should get banned for that. I really do. I do think you should get banned for that. But when you're tweeting learn to code, are you kidding me? That's crazy.
Yeah, and these people need to grow a spine. But anyways, Kassy Dillon, thanks so much for coming on. I'll give you the last word.
Well, I want you guys all to check out Lone Conservative. It is a publication for college students. So if you're a college student, you're a writer, maybe even a high school student, we're willing to have you, teach you how to write, and help you get out into the media because it's not always easy. So you can check it out at loneconservative.com, and you can follow me at Twitter at Kassy Dillon.
I like a rebel chick, and she hella fit. She an activist, anti-establishment. Got a rocker look, make a blue collar empty his pocketbook. He in love with the thrill, but she don't love him, she in love with the world. Sexy tattoos on the back of the girl. Yeah, she is single, but don't wanna mingle. You give her your number, she give middle finger like, yeah. Tell me where have you been all of my life? You a libertarian, is that right? I don't want to talk about no politics. Kool-Aid, you sugar, let me and you mix. Get together, I treat you right, but not like Cinderella. You a sexy, independent, intellectual. I hope your unmentionables are edible, incredible. I live against the grain, so that's the type of